This video features the best picks and bans for each map and game mode inside of Ranked. If you guys are lost in Ranked, I really recommend watching to the end of this video so you guys will have full intel on how to easily push to the pro rank. Alright, so to start off this guide, the first game mode we're going to be talking about is going to be Gem Grab. Now the first map inside of Gem Grab we're going to be talking about is going to be Double Swoosh. Now for Double Swoosh, some of the best first picks are going to be like Janet, Ollie, Mr. P, Penny, and Hank. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer in case you guys didn't know, like Ollie, Mr. P, and Hank are like one of the best brawlers in the entire game. And especially with a brawler like Ollie, he doesn't have the greatest attack range, so with him sneaking around inside the bushes, it's going to be very beneficial to him. A brawler like Mr. P, you can use those porters to scout the bushes, so it's going to be very solid for him as well. And of course, Jan is going to be a very good mid, or even a lane brawler as a gem carrier, and she can just scout those bushes as well with her attacks. Now as far as some of the best last picks, you can run brawlers like Melody, Carl, Frank, Juju, and Mortis. Now in case you guys missed my other rank, guys, the reason why you want to be picking these brawlers late or last is because these brawlers typically have a lot of counters in the game, but they can be very good in the right situation. So if the situation calls for it, then you can definitely pick one of these brawlers and counter, or just have at least somewhat of a good matchup, because these brawlers are still very strong in the meta. Like if you look at brawlers like Frank and Mortis, these are definitely late picks because these brawlers can definitely be countered pretty easily. But if there are brawlers on the other team that will get easily countered by Frank and Mortis, that is why you want to be picking them late. Now some of the other good brawlers for this map, you can run Pearl, Amber, Surge, Stu, and Otis. A lot of these brawlers are going to be very versatile and multi-projectile, just for example like Pearl. Amber's a brawler that can burn down the bushes with their super and expose the enemy team. Surge is a brawler that can counter a lot of tanks and assassins as well. So a lot of these brawlers that are going to be good, like either as first picks, mid picks, or late picks, yeah, you got to be picking these brawlers as well. But okay, the next Gem Grab map we're going to be talking about is going to be Hard Rock Mine. Now for Hard Rock Mine, same thing, you kind of want to run the same brawlers like Ollie, Mr. P, Hank, Rico, and Stu. Same thing with Hard Rock Mine, you want to be maintaining control of the bushes, and with brawlers like Ollie and Hank, they can make it very easy for your team. Or even having a brawler like Rico, you can bounce his shots off the wall, scout it into the bushes, and get you guys easy control. As far as some of the late picks, you know, Melody, Carl, Frank, Kenji, Rosa, kind of the same thing as Double Swoosh. But the thing with these late picks is you have brawlers like Kenji and Rosa. These brawlers can really dominate if you get into the enemy team's bushes, especially with a brawler like Rosa, who really benefits with being inside of bushes. And then some of the other good brawlers you can also run like Jean, Meepo, Ruffs, Janet, and Ash. You guys might be like, Ruffs really? But Ruffs is another brawler like Rico who can bounce his projectiles off of walls. Like say for example Rico's ban, that is when you can play Ruffs as like a mid pick, late pick, whatever it may be, you know, just so you can bounce the shots off the walls and gain pressure for your team. And then of course a brawler like Ash, like if you know Kenji, Rose, or other tanks are picked, Ash is still going to be very solid in this meta. He's a brawler that can really thrive on Hard Rock Mine, especially with all the bushes, so like tanks are going to be very dominant on this map. But okay, the next Gem Grab map we're going to be talking about is going to be Undermine. Now some of the good first pick brawlers are going to be like Janet, Ollie, Mr. P, Hank, and Stu. Now you guys can kind of see a pattern here, right? Like no matter what the Gem Grab map is, if you run like Ollie, Hank, Mr. P, you guys will be pretty much set. These brawlers are just so incredibly strong, and they don't really have a whole ton of counters, especially on these maps that are more closed off and have a ton of bushes, right? Now as far as the late picks, kind of the same thing, you know, Melody, Carl, Frank, Leon, and Rosa. Undermine is all about also maintaining control of not only mid, but the lanes on the side as well. There's a ton of bushes, so that's why you also want to be running a brawler like even Leon or Rosa yet again. Carl can be decent, you know, in the mid. Melody is going to be a very solid like aggro brawler to just get into the enemy team's faces, so that's why Melody is going to be pretty good here as well. And there's some of the other good picks like Gus, Meepo, Ruffs, Penny, and even Ash. Same thing of course, but you want to be running like Gus and Penny in the mid, obviously. Even brawler like Meepo as well, you want to be using those kind of longer range brawlers in the mid. You don't want to be using them on the lanes because they're going to get popped down, right? They don't have as much health as like tanks and assassins. However, kind of like with Ash inside of Hard Rock Mine, you can run Ash on the lane. He can be a very good brawler to just run through those bushes, just steamroll people and just run them down. And of course, the last Gem Grab map we're going to be talking about is going to be Gem Fort. Some of the best picks for Gem Fort is going to be Janet, Ollie, Hank, Rico, and Stu. Now, reason why you want to be playing a brawler like Rico, you have those long lanes, right, with all the bushes, so you can use Rico inside the lanes and just go ahead and bounce your shots off the walls and really extend your attack range. This way, the enemies won't be able to sneak up onto you, and even if you like run them in the mid or you're in the enemy team's side of the map, you can just bounce the shots off the walls and they'll just go like absolutely berserk. And then of course Stu is still very strong. You can't go wrong with running Stu, whether if it's in the mid or on the lane. He's still going to be very solid, especially with the breakthrough gadget and busting down those walls. It's very clutch. Now some of the late picks for Gem 4 like Melody, Carl, Max, Ash, and Amber. Max I really love on this map, you know, with the versatility. She has her hypercharge. She can really be a very good support brawler and just speed up her team. Amber is going to be another good brawler just like Double Swoosh to burn down the lanes, just burn down the mid bushes, whatever it may be, to expose the enemy team. And of course with Ash, yet again, just like all the other times I talked about Ash, she's going to be a great tank to just just run through those bushes and just run down the enemies. And then finally, some of the other good picks for Gen 4 can be like Otis, Rico, Griff, Nita, and Jean. Jean more likely a mid brawler, but of course you can run brawlers like Nita and Griff on the lanes, right? Nita's going to be a great anti-tank brawler, that's why she's going to be a very solid pick. Same thing with Griff, he has a lot of good DPS, especially at a close range, so if you can sneak around inside those bushes and pop the enemies down with Griff, you're going to be good to go. But okay, moving into the next game mode, we're going to be talking about Hot Zone. Now, the first map inside of Hot Zone we're going to be talking about is going to be Dueling Beetles. Now, for Dueling Beetles, some of the best first picks are going to be like Ollie, Lou, Meeple, Barry, and Hank. Of course, Ollie's still going to be one of the best brawlers in the game, especially inside a Hot Zone. You can run through those bushes, pull people in, and just totally hypnotize them. Hank, especially with those unbreakable walls, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. He can just camp behind those unbreakable walls and just totally hit the enemies from a very far distance. A brawler like Lou and Barry, you know, you can't go wrong with them. They are like so dominant in Hot Zone for like such a long time now, and you can't go wrong with them like in any Hot Zone map. Now, as far as some of the late picks, you could run throwers like Barley, Sprout, or even other brawlers like Kenji, Cordelius, and Buster. Brawlers like Barley and Sprout are going to be very good because they have more counters, but they are very good for area control, and that's why they're going to be more of the later picks. As far as like Kenji, Cord, and Buster, these are great counter pick brawlers, especially like people like Buster and Cordelius, right? Cordelius has his hypercharge and his super to send people into the Shadow Realm and make it a 2v2 fight. And of course, a brawler like Buster, he has a slow-mo replay gadget to pull people in, or he has a super that can bounce the projectiles right back into the enemy team's faces. And then some of the other good brawlers you can play are going to be like B, Griff, Poco, Penny, and Juju. Of course, all of these brawlers are going to be very solid inside of Hot Zone no matter the game mode. That's why you have brawlers like Griff, Penny, or even Juju too. Throwers are going to be very dominant. You can run Juju even as a first pick. I would recommend it, but you know, she could get countered a little bit more easily now in this meta. But yeah, like for example, let's say Barry's banned. That's when you can run Poco, and having a support brawler inside a Hot Zone, I mean, to keep your team alive, I mean, it's very clutch. But okay, moving into the next Hot Zone map, we're going to be talking about Open Business. Now, for Open Business, some of the best first picks, I'm assuming you guys can imagine, is going to be like Ollie, Lou, Barry, Meeple, and Hank. It's pretty much kind of like the same thing as Dueling Beetles, except you don't have like all those bushes and walls kind of like right above and below the Hot Zone, right? But it's still going to be one of those singular Hot Zone maps, and that's why a brawler like Barry, you know, and Lou, and all these other brawlers that are very dominant right now inside a Hot Zone are going to be good first picks no matter what, as long as they're not banned. Now, some of the good late picks for Open Business, you can run Carl, Jackie, Kenji, Squeak, and even Melody. As you guys can notice, I even throw in like Jackie, Kenji, Melody. Those are all good aggro brawlers that are going to be good as late picks. You want to be picking them late because these brawlers can get countered. However, if the enemy team is running squishy brawlers, that is when you run these kind of aggro high health brawlers to just steamroll the enemy team. And then finally, some of the good later picks, same exact thing actually as Dueling Beetles. It's going to be B, Griff, Poco, Penny, and Juju. I really love Penny on this map because you can really throw your mortar behind that unbreakable wall, and it's going to be a total nightmare for the enemy team to deal with, especially if you have the hypercharge. Of course, Poco is probably going to be even better on this map because it's even more opened up than Dueling Beetles, so you can really thrive with a healer like Poco on top of Open Business. But okay, the next Hot Zone map we're going to be talking about is going to be Parallel Plays. For Parallel Plays, same thing, pretty much, you know, you have Ollie, Hank, RT, Meeple, and Stu. Now, this is a very annoying map, and I personally don't like it that much because it can be tricky to play, especially if you have teammates that don't know what the hell they're doing, right? But this is why the first picks changes a little bit, right? You have brawlers like Meeple and Stu in there because they're very versatile, and they're going to be a lot better on these kind of two Hot Zone maps. As far as the late picks, you're going to have brawlers like Dinah, Jackie, Kenji, Squeak, and Lily. I personally love all of these brawlers on top of this map because they all thrive in their own situations. Dinah's going to be a good thrower, more high skill cap, but very rewarding. You have Kenji, who can use his super and dash into the enemy team's faces. You have Lily, who has her super charge trait, and she can use her gadget to just sneak up onto the enemies and get some easy kills. And then some of the other good picks, you know, you have Barry, Juju, Janet, Penny, and Melody. Throwers, no matter what, on top of Parallel Plays are going to really dominate because you have those walls in the middle of the Hot Zone, and throwers can literally just run around it and protect themselves with it. That, of course, is only if like a brawler like Hank and, you know, Shade them are not in play. Then you can run throwers and pretty much get the game pretty easily. And then finally, the last Hot Zone map we're going to be talking about is going to be Ring of Fire. Same thing with Ring of Fire, you know, you got Ollie, Lou, Meeple, Stu, and Juju. Now, I know a lot of people don't really like this map because it can be pretty spawn trappy, especially if the enemy team gains pressure of your bushes. So you really want to make sure, especially with the first picks, that you're picking a lot of these top dominant brawlers so you have the best chances possible to not get spawn trapped. As far as some of the late picks go, you have Mr. P, Janet, Angelo, Max, and Carl. Even though Mr. P is so dominant, he can still be countered pretty easily, you know, especially inside of a draft setting. So you want to be picking him more on the later side, even though you probably will see pros and other people picking him first, but that's because they know what they're doing, right? And then finally, some of the other good picks, you have Jean, Gus, Piper, B, and Maisie. All of these brawlers are very good at long ranges, especially brawlers like Gus and Piper, right? But then you even have Jean, who can scout the bushes with the vision gear and make sure nobody sneaks up onto you and your teammates. And of course, with this super, you can yank people in and get your teammates to help you burst down the enemies. And I mean, it's a very good, you know, brawler pool for Ring of Fire. But okay, the next game mode we're going to be talking about is going to be Knockout. Now, the first map for Knockout we're going to be talking about is going to be Belle's Rock. Now, some of the good first picks for Belle's Rock is going to be Jean, Sprout, Gray, Ollie, and Hank. Belle's Rock is very interesting because you have all those unbreakable walls, you have the bushes with the walls. I mean, it's just a very weird map, right? But this is where like a brawler like Gray or even Hank comes into play. Gray, you can use his walking key gadget to break the walls, pull people in closer to you, and even use your super to teleport onto them. Hank, of course, is going to be very dominant. You have all the walls, and you can just attack right through them, so he's going to be pretty solid here as well as the first pick. Now, some of the late picks on side of Belle's Rock are going to be like Grom, Miko, Melody, Kit, and Squeak. You know, brawlers like Miko and especially Kit, they're going to be very good as late picks, especially if you have a lot of throwers or squishy brawlers on the other team. These brawlers can just jump onto the enemies, jump over walls, and easily get onto the enemy team, no problem. And then finally, some of the other good brawlers you can use is going to be like Brock, RT, Gus, Rico, and Juju. Rico, I personally love playing on this map, especially in the mid. You can just bounce your shots off the walls and just keep the enemies back. Throwers are going to be very solid as well, no matter what, so you got to be running brawlers like Juju, of course. Then, of course, you have the sharpshooters and long ranges because you want to keep people back. Like, no matter the map in Knockout, you want to be keeping the people away from you. So running brawlers like Gus, of course, to keep the brawlers back, and he's also a support brawler, so he's going to be good here. Okay, moving into the next Knockout map is going to be Flaring Phoenix. For Flaring Phoenix, you got to use brawlers like Jean, Brock, Gray, Ollie, and Hank as the first picks. Same thing with Flaring Phoenix, but it's actually interesting because a couple of seasons ago, I really remember people dominating with Hank on this map, even though Hank didn't even have his hypercharge or buffs or anything like that. Hank can be very good on the left or right lanes because you can just camp behind those walls and keep people far back inside of those bushes. Now, some of the good late picks on Flaring Phoenix is going to be Grom, Sprout, Melody, Kit, and Squeak. As like I said, throwers are going to be very good inside a Knockout, especially with those unbreakable walls on this map. You can run brawlers like Grom and Sprout that can really keep a lot of pressure. Well, mostly Sprout, not really Grom. But the thing about Sprout is he has his walls, right? He can really block off choke points and lanes, so that's why he's going to be a good late pick here. And then finally, some of the other good picks, you can run Tick, RT, Pearl, Piper, and Gus. The reason why RT is going to be pretty good, I haven't talked about him a lot, but the reason why he's good is because in case they want to run like any sort of tank, you can just use RT super and totally pop him down, especially if you have the gadget. But even without RT super, you have his long range, you can mark up the enemies and help your teammates and yourself do more damage onto the enemy team. But okay, the next Knockout map we're going to be talking about is going to be New Horizons. Now, some of the good first picks on this map is going to be Jean, Gray, Ollie, Hank, and Piper. Now, of course, running Jean and Piper are like no-brainers where you have the long range. This map is very open in the middle, and this is one of the newer maps in the map pool, so not a lot of people know how to draft this map. And of course, we have the late picks on New Horizons, so run like Grom, Sprout, Miko, Kit, and Melody. Kind of the same thing, right? Like, especially with brawlers like Miko and Kit, you want to be picking them late if you want to like run like a Darrow Kit or a Melody Kit. Kit can be a very good late pick here. Some of the other good picks you can also use on this map are going to be like Tick, RT, Angelo, Gus, and Juju. I know you guys probably like, why Angelo? But there are the spots with water on top of this map, and it can be good at just camping in those corners and just keeping the enemy team back. And even with a brawler like Juju, who can walk on top of water as well, and she can just camp literally right there on top of the water and just lob over the walls to just hit the enemies. I mean, these brawlers are so good for this map. And then finally, the last Knockout map we're going to be talking about is going to be one of my favorites. It's Out in the Open. Some of the best first picks are going to be like Jean, Brock, Piper, Ollie, and Hank. Out in the open, you know, it's very open. Of course, in the middle, it's, you know, all the brawlers are out in the open, but with all the bushes, especially inside of mid, you want to be just keeping the enemies in those bushes. You don't want to you do not want to let them sneak up onto you. So running brawlers like Jean, you can run vision gear, hit them, and just make sure that your team can see them. And then, of course, some of the later picks you can run like Carl, Sprout, Melody, Kit, and Squeak. You guys can kind of see a pattern with a lot of these late picks. You have throwers, you have squishy brawlers, but they can be very good for area control, and that's why, you know, they're higher risk but higher reward if you can especially get them as a later pick. And then finally, for Out in the Open, you know, for some of the other good picks, you can run like Pearl, RT, Belle, Mandy, or even Eve. I personally love playing Eve on this map, especially with her walking on water. She has multiple projectiles, and her hypercharge is very irritating if you can manage to charge it up. Mandy, with her hypercharge, she can be very solid as well, especially if you can line up her super at the start of a new round. Or even running a brawler like Pearl, she was actually used in the World Finals. I know that was months ago, but Pearl is still very solid in this meta and very good on top of this map. Alright guys, the next game mode we're going to be talking about is going to be Bounty. Now the first Bounty map we're going to be going over is going to be Layer Cake. Now some of the good first pick brawlers are going to be like Ollie, Hank, Mr. P, Stu, and Juju. With Layer Cake, it's very kind of segregated as far as like horizontally, and of course there's going to be a lot of walls and bushes, right? So this is why you're going to want to run brawlers like Ollie and... So this way, you're going to want to run brawlers like Hank, who can blow up his bubbles and hit people through the walls. Mr. P can use his briefcases to bounce his shots over the walls. And even a brawler like Juju or throwers in general are going to be great because they can obviously, of course, just lob right over those walls. Now, as far as some of the late picks you can use is going to be like Grom, Sprout, Kit, Melody, and Daryl. Of course, kind of like Knockout, you know, you have brawlers like Kid and Daryl. They can be good if you don't have any counters, then you can go ahead and run that kind of comp. But then, of course, you can also use throwers as well. They are going to be a little bit more high risk, high reward. So that's why you want to pick them if there are no thrower counters already picked. Now, some of the other good brawlers you can use are going to be like Meeple, Janet, Gray, Gus, and Piper. As you guys can notice, these are all like sharpshooter, long range type of brawlers. This is because, of course, in Bounty, you want to be keeping your distance, not really feeding the enemy team stars. So running these kind of sharpshooters or brawlers that have long ranges, they're going to be probably your best options for just keeping your distance and chipping people away from a distance. Alright guys, the next bounty map we're going to be talking about is going to be Hideout. Now for Hideout, some of the best brawlers is kind of the exact same thing as Lair Cake. You got Ollie, Hank, Mr. P, Stu, and Juju. Now even though this map is more opened up, especially in the mid and on the lanes, Hank and Mr. P can still be very good because you can hide inside the bushes and hit people through the walls. Or even on the right side of your map, you can hit people that are trying to hide inside of their bushes and hit them through their walls. Now, some of the later picks, you know, it's kind of like the exact same thing, just kind of a little bit switched here, but it's going to be Grom, Sprout, Kit, Melody, and Daryl. Same thing if you guys want to run Kit, Daryl, there's no counters, you can go ahead and do that. Melody is going to be good, aggressive brawler to just get into the enemy team's faces, especially if they're playing like squishy brawlers or even throwers. Melody is going to be a good counter to them. And of course, some of the other good picks you can use are going to be like Max, RT, Janet, Gray, and Piper. Since this map, like I said, is going to be more opened up than Lair Cake, you still want to be using these longer range brawlers, but it's even more important that you're using them now. With brawlers like RT, kind of like how I talked about earlier in the video, how RT is going to be great, you know, to mark up the enemies at a long distance, help you guys do more damage, but also if you guys face tanks and assassins, he can pop down his super and just burst down those enemies no problem. But okay, the next bounty map we're going to be talking about is going to be Shooting Star. For Shooting Star, I recommend Mr. P, Piper, Mandy, Angelo, Max as first picks. Now, Shooting Star, probably one of the more opened up bounty maps that you guys are going to ever see inside of Brawl Stars, right? So this is more so why it's very important that you are really running these long range brawlers. If Mr. P, of course, is not banned, he can actually be a very good brawler because he can counter brawlers, especially like Angelo and Piper. Even though Mr. P can be countered by like tanks and assassins, so you really gotta watch out for that, he can really just frustrate those kind of single projectile brawlers because it's gonna take him forever to take down those porters. Now, some of the good later picks for Shooting Star is gonna be like Carl, Mortis, Gene, Sprout, and Juju. Throwers are gonna be good, especially if you guys want to run like Sprout and Juju in the mid, or Juju especially because there's water, right? But Sprout's gonna be good because he has walls, he can maintain air control, so that's gonna be solid. And of course, running an assassin like Mortis, like I said, if you have like a Mr. P on the other team as a first pick, you can pick Mortis as a counter pick or as a late pick against other sharpshooters as well and just totally steamroll those squishy brawlers. And then finally, some of the other good brawlers you can definitely pick are going to be like Belle, Gray, Max, RT, and B. Now, I really like the Max pick here because Max can be a very good like late or mid pick as well, especially to just give your team support, speed your teammates, or just really pressure and just get into the enemy team's faces, kind of like a Melody pick. Now, B with her hypercharge, she's going to be better than she ever was before. I know I didn't really talk about B a whole ton, but now you can definitely use B with her hypercharge. She can still be a very good option, like she can still be a very good option to chip with the enemies from a long range, or she has a supercharged shot to deal with tanks and assassins that you might see on Shooting Star. And of course, our last bounty map we're going to be talking about, this is going to be a new one, is Dry Season. For Dry Season, I recommend Hank, Mr. P, Juju, Stu, and Meeple as the first picks. This map hasn't been in the current rotation for a long time, so people don't really know how to really draft these kind of maps, so I just recommend playing brawlers that you're comfortable with, or so I recommend just picking brawlers that you're pretty comfortable with, or just picking a lot of the S tier brawlers like the one I mentioned as first picks. Now, some of the later picks you can use for Dry Season are going to be like Carl, Melody, Sprout, Tick, and Gray. These are going to be more of the type of brawlers that can really counter a lot of the squishy brawlers. You know, you have Gray with the teleporters and the hypercharge. It can be pretty disgusting there. Melody is going to be another aggressive brawler, kind of like what I talked about Melody and Max a little bit earlier. And then finally, some of the other good brawlers you can run are going to be like Belle, Gray, Max, RT, and B. Same old, you know, like I talked about with these bounty maps, you want to keep your distance, have those long range brawlers, single projectile brawlers, so you can keep your distance, right? In the mid for Dry Season, it's very open up except for like that middle part, I guess. And of course, on your side, you have the walls and the bushes if you need to retreat back. So this is why you want to be using like all of these top meta S tier brawlers, or just brawlers in general that have long ranges. Alright guys, the next game mode we're going to be talking about is going to be Brawl Ball. Now, the first map for Brawl Ball is going to be Pinball Dreams. Now, for Pinball Dreams, some of the best brawlers I recommend using as first picks are going to be Ollie, Lou, Stu, B, and Hank. Now, Pinball Dreams is very open up in the mid, but it's kind of weird, right? You have those walls, you have the bushes that kind of leads into your team, and you have the massive wall that's blocking your goal, right? So you want to be using a lot of these top meta brawlers like Ollie. He can sneak around in the bushes, just be super irritating. Hank, he's very good on this map. He can just totally blow up his bubble and hit people through the walls as well. Mr. P is going to be great. You can throw your porter station all the way in the back of the map with the hypercharge and just totally spawn in those porters and irritate the hell out of the enemy team. Now some of the good late picks on Pinball Dreams are going to be like Melody, Dinah, Frank, Kenji, and Primo. Now a theme you're going to see, or like a reoccurring pattern inside of Brawl Ball, is going to be a lot of tanks and assassins. Brawl Ball in general for like the longest time has been pretty tank dominant, so that's why I really recommend going like Frank, El Primo, and Kenji as later picks. Though you don't want to be picking them like in the middle or really in the early, because you can always run counter picks, you know, like B or even like a Spike, Griff, Nidor, for example. So that's why you want to be picking them late. Now some of the other good brawlers you can use are going to be like Max, Griff, Meeple, Nita, and the Twins. Of course, like I just talked about, I totally forgot that I had these brawlers in the other good brawlers section. But that's why I'm going to be running brawlers like Griff and Nita, because they're good anti-tank brawlers, right? But they're also pretty versatile, you know, especially how much damage they can deal with Nita with the bear or Griff with his super. I mean, it's pretty versatile, and it's good save picks for you guys. Alright guys, the next Brawl Ball map we're going to be talking about is going to be Sneaky Fields. Now, pretty much the exact same thing for Pinball Dreams, just run Ollie, Lou, Stu, B, and Hank as the first picks. The thing about Sneaky Fields is that it is just so much bushes in the middle of the map. That's why you want to be really running like a lot of tank dominant brawlers here. Now with Ollie and Hank having so much health, that's why they're going to really thrive just running inside those bushes, and they can use the walls and bushes to protect themselves. Now some of the good later picks, you can run Melody, Carl, Frank, Kenji, and Primo. Frank, Kenji, Primo, like I told you guys, you're going to see this recurring theme. They're definitely one of the top tanks throughout the entire game. That's why I definitely recommend them, especially inside of Sneaky Fields. And what better map could you do it on a map compared to like Sneaky Fields? And then finally, some of the other good brawlers you can use for Sneaky Fields is kind of the same thing as like Max, Griff, Meeple, Nita, and Spike. Kind of the same thing as Pinball Dreams. You want to be running these brawlers that can kind of counter tanks or just be able to have some way of dealing a high amount of damage at a close range. Especially inside of Sneaky Fields, if the enemy team is drafting a lot of tanks, you want to be running a lot of anti-tank brawlers. It's just the kind of thing about drafting you just gotta know, and that's why you want to be picking these types of brawlers. Now the next Brawl Ball map we're going to be talking about is going to be Triple Dribble. For Triple Dribble, a little bit similar to like Sneaky Fields and Pinball Dreams, but it's going to be Ollie, Lou, Stu, Hank, and Juju. The reason why I would recommend Juju is because there are walls, but there's like a lot of like walls just all over the place, and having throwers is actually super irritating on this map, especially if the enemy team is not running like wall breakers. Now if you guys are smart, you guys should be running those kind of wall breakers to eliminate thrower picks. So you want to use brawlers like Melody, Frank, Kenji, Primo, and Ash. I didn't really talk about Ash, you know, in like Sneaky Fields, but you could also use him as well. He's another very good tank inside the game. But brawlers like Frankie and Primo, they can definitely break walls. They're going to be very solid, especially on this map. They can use the walls if they're not breaking them, just to get closer to the enemies and just apply a ton of pressure on this more closed off map. And then finally, some of the other good options, same thing, like you have Otis, Max, Nita, Griff, and Poco. A lot of these multi-projectile brawlers that can counter tanks, that's why you have brawlers like Otis, Nita, and Griff, right? But then of course you have brawlers like Poco. If you're running like a Poco double tank or like a Poco hybrid comp, that is the reason why you want to have like some sort of support brawler inside of Brawl Ball. Even though I didn't really talk about it for Sneaky Fields or Pinball Dreams, you could run Poco or Barry or just some type of support to just keep your teammates alive, especially if you have a tank heavy comp. And then finally, the last Brawl Ball map we're going to be talking about is going to be Center Stage. For Center Stage, the first picks I recommend is going to be Ollie, Lou, Hank, Barry, and Stu. Now, the thing about Center Stage is opened in the middle, right? But then you have the bushes that kind of just, you know, make it very frustrating to push up, especially if you don't have a lot of long range, right? So this is why you want to really be making sure that you're keeping pressure and waiting for the enemy team to go down first. If you can get that 3v2 advantage and just sneak through the bushes and eliminate the enemy team, apply a ton of pressure, that is when you guys are going to really be winning some games inside of Center Stage. Now for the late picks, I recommend brawlers like Melody, Carl, Frank, Kenji, and Primo. As you guys can probably imagine, yes, Frank, Primo, and Kenji, or even Ash, you know, they're going to be good for like all of these Brawl Ball maps inside the ranked rotation. So definitely use them. And you know, especially with Center Stage, there's like no breaks in where the bushes are in the middle or even on the very side lanes. So that is why they're going to really thrive as well. They can really sneak up on the enemy team as long as they're not like really scouting it. They're not running brawlers like Rico, for example. And then some of the other good options I recommend are going to be like Surge, Otis, Sandy, Nita, and Griff. In case you have a feeling that the enemies are going to be picking a lot of tanks and assassins, that's why you have brawlers like Surge, Griff, Nita. You guys get the idea. Like I talked about it for all the other Brawl Ball maps. So you want to be running tanks or like anti-tank brawlers. It really depends on what the enemies are picking first and what type of brawlers are banned, right? Now I know I didn't mention this on the graphic, but as a first pick or other good brawler, you definitely have to be using Rico. I know I only thought about it just now. I don't know why I didn't put it on the graphic, but Rico is still going to be a very good option because he's very good at scouting those lanes. If Rico's banned, you want to pick another brawler that can bounce off the bushes. Go with Ruffs. Kind of like what I talked about in the beginning of the video with Hard Rock Mine. A brawler like Ruffs who can bounce his shots off the walls. He can be a great option inside of Center Stage. Well, anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed that video, I highly recommend you guys go check out this video right here.